I'm Allan McLennan. I have the PADEM Media Group up in San Francisco. Been doing and dealing in this environment for quite some time, and I've been really fortunate to pull together with Erick a great panel today to really discuss some of the issues that we're facing in the industry in and of itself today, and that is we're all getting kind of tired of the subscription model and how that's going to evolve. Now, we live and breathe it, so it's not something that the consumer has really been recognizing and realizing, but now some of the press has really been out there looking at how many services will you take. And if there's anything that's really brought this to light is last week when Disney Plus launched, and now there's another one, and there's another one. And Hulu just this week or just yesterday raised theirs up to $55 a month. Now, all good, all well side. This is something that is key in how we're going to move forward, particularly in how the content is going to be licensed and offered out into the marketplace. What I want to do is just kind of go through a little bit of some of the research that has been out there. Interest in upcoming platforms have just skyrocketed. They're honestly, without even trying, oversaturating the market. And that tells you how vibrant our category is when it comes to television, in particular with content, and how best to address it in any given market that we're going to. One of our panelists today, Ben, who's with Sinclair, and Sinclair is doing some amazing work. And how many markets now are you in?
Well, the company has 200 stations in 89 markets, and in the OTT world, I think we're in about 79.
Yeah, so as you can see, and this is local markets with ad support. 16.5% really understood why these new services are coming out. Interesting difference in opinion when you look at this around the world. In the EU and in the UK, still is kind of, even though they're saturated with new types of services, they still they're really not moving away from MyTV or the different networks that are on the market. BBC is still exploding, even though they're offering an online service. Of those services, 90% that they would stay with Netflix even when Disney comes out. Now, curious, I'm just looking in the audience right here. How many of you have children or grandchildren that are below 12 years old? That's Disney. And let's face it, there's some great content that's on Disney. That is going to be something that's going to be really driving a lot of subscriptions that they're currently going to be looking at. And how do you say, anything negative about within the first day of 10 million plus subscribers stepping up to it? But what I'm going to do is kind of kick us off a little bit with the thought around this is not just the content, not just the subscription, but what are the next kinds of models that may be coming in there. I alluded to the fact with Ben, with Sinclair, with ad support. Our other panelists that are on this panel today are doing deals with content or with carriers and operators that have ad support aspects of their services, and these are the areas that we're wanting to take a look at how many may be moving into that realm. Within this stream in the next day or so, you're also going to be able to see Pluto TV and a few others that are living and breathing in that environment. However, 44%, let's just say half of us will still want to subscribe to different types of services. That's me. I can't wait. Actually, one of the services that I don't have would be, and I really kind of shy away from with Comcast, is like the Red Zone, sports specific. But if there was a really great live IP delivered to any device that I had, sports service at a reasonable price, I consider adding that. So I think there's a flex that's currently going to happen within the next 12 months. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're not going to talk about the past. We're going to talk about what's working. And we're going to talk about what may be, with some history and wisdom sitting behind that. But in that, what I'm going to ask each of my panelists to do is I'm going to introduce you to a sizzle reel from myself. And then we're going to go through each one of our panelists' sizzle reels, and after each one, I'm going to ask each of them to give kind of a summation of who they are, what they do, why it's important, and what's their association with our subject matter today. So I've been lucky enough over the last many years to work with companies in and around this area, but also around the world, throughout the APAC, throughout the Nordics, new types of business models. I mean, just to give you an example, I'm sure you already know this, but like up in the Nordics, and that means Norway, Denmark, Finland, they have had these offerings for 10 years, and 80% of their market subscribe to it. Different types of OTT services. So when you're wanting to look at what and where things work, take a look up in Norway. Netflix only has 40% of the market, even though they are the largest, but they haven't had the impact that they've had in the rest of the world. So with me today, right next to me, is Anthony Laser, who's right at the moment, you're the head of content partnerships for Xumo. And so I want to be able to take everybody through a little bit about what Xumo is doing. Wow, that's very impressive. Tell us a little bit about Xumo, about yourself too.
Yeah. So I'm the VP of Partnerships and Programming at Xumo. Xumo was originally built by Panasonic, initially thought of as an OS for their smart TVs. But what it has grown into or evolved into is a native solution when someone buys a device, goes home, sets it up on their network. They have our 180 plus channels natively integrated into that device. And what that solves for is it allows Xumo to be available for in these households without having to go into a channel store and download the streaming app. Additionally, we're linear first experience, which means for all of our channels, we have what's a pseudo live experience when you enter the channel. It's numbered like traditional TV, and each channel's branded, and the user is able to first be in live, and then also to navigate to VOD assets that are available. The way I would look at Xumo is that there's not much overlap with the cable subscriber and a Xumo user if you look at those two groups. And so I really see Xumo as a next generation replacement for basic cable.
That's fantastic. Let's jump right into Mark Young, who's the Senior Vice President of Global Strategy for Fandango. A little bit about Fandango.
At Fandango, we're all about movies. We are the world's top entertainment brands, delivering the most innovative movie experiences to over 60 million fans.
And to know on the Cape, I think it's cool.
And with Fandango Now, you can watch 80,000 movies and TV shows at home or on the go. And you can find us on more than 300 million devices.
1, 2, 3, 4. For the record, this was not my idea.
I'm not a demon. See?
And Fandango Now is full of firsts.
Yeah, baby!
You just write that now? Pretty good.
What's happening? Where are they taking her?
Wait, what the hell are you talking about?
The future is now. Fandango Now.
Use the stones again.
Let's go get this son of a bitch.
Another wow. Mark, tell us a little bit about
Thank
this.
you. Yeah, thank you for having me. So many of you probably know Fandango as a theatrical ticketing company, but over the last 5 years, we really diversified our business to become more of an entertainment platform across the entire movie journey and now TV. So we think about, historically, when you think about planning to go to a movie and how you discover a movie and TV, we've consolidated that across different aspects of our business. So you probably saw we own Rotten Tomatoes, we own Movie Clips, and in addition to watching movies in the home, now you can watch movies in Fandango Now. So for us, we put that all together on one platform, not only with a single identity, but a payment platform. And we put a membership around earning points on whether you buy movies out of the home or in the home. So we think we've done a service to the super fans around collapsing that intent to an action. I want to see a movie and what do I want to see? And then ultimately, we're trying to curate better recommendations and personalization for you across that entire life cycle.
It's fantastic. You also have a loyalty club that kind of ties everybody in to be able to serve up content more on a personalized level as well, don't
Yes.
you? Yes. All right, next up, so we can go through, is Erick. We're a little out of order, but that's okay. We disrupt things. Erick Opeka, who's the president of Cinedigm, and I'm not going to belabor my introduction on this. I'm going to let Cinedigm's piece do that and let Erick take it from there.
Shall we begin?
Here we go.
There's something in the air here.
I can feel it.
Come on, move.
You ready to roll?
I'm coming, and he aims to bury you. Why not you, soldier?
What is happening? I need to be number one.
You have power, but you don't know how to wield it.
Only God can forgive you now, you.
Are you gonna make me famous?
Oh. Sorry, I didn't let that finish out there, but Erick, please, tell us a little.
longer version there than
Yeah, it was impactful, I will say.
But you probably saw a heavy emphasis on China in that reel. We got acquired by a Chinese private equity company a couple of years ago. So, but to give you a broad-based overview of what we do, Cinedigm is essentially a studio that's focused on bringing channels, content, and services to the global ecosystem of platforms, OEMs, providers. So when we talk about channels, we're talking about both subscription and linear and AVOD channels that we both own and operate with partners. Content, we have a library of about 56,000 titles that we distribute globally across all lines of business, from theatrical all the way down to free and ad-supported. And then services, we operate technology and streaming platform services to help companies do exactly what we're doing, which is manage the distribution of their content into this rapidly complicating ecosystem. So that's a little bit about what we do.
I think you just nailed it, the rapidly complicating ecosystem, because it is just exploding, and we're going to get into that kind of capabilities of what each of you are starting to discover. Next up is Ben Lister, and this takes us to a little bit different type of offering, but yet you're partnering with the OTT channels as well within your service. So let's take a look at what Sinclair is doing.
All right.
Did you know that Stir has live local news?
Yeah. Well now. In the summertime, when it's hot outside, the streets are bare, there's no one there, and the valley's
Boy, that escalated quickly.
That's a great close. You know, so you're saying 100,000. I mean, the audience out in the world has been hungry for this content for a long time. You know, I mean, I was fortunate enough to launch in 99-2000, which is a long time ago, the first on-demand streaming service around the world, Select Play. We had 3 million users and 300,000 viewers a week on this service around the world. And now we're starting to see this on local basis versus just on, at that time, CRT panels or quote-unquote digital. Last and certainly not least is Marshall Nord. Marshall Nord is president of the Americas for ShortsTV. And Marshall has hitched his wagon to a really dynamic new service around the world that has, and I'm going to let you talk about it when we get to it, but the millions of viewers that you have and where you're seeing traction. But a little bit about Shorts. I'm going to let this one run out. Okay. All right, thank you guys. Marshall, tell us.
I get fired up every time I see that. It's very exciting for me. ShortsTV, we're the first and the only linear OTT HD channel dedicated to short-form video entertainment. And that's movies and series. We have now over 13,000 titles in our library. Live action, animation, documentary, many of those are award-winning from festivals around the world, star-studded celebrity titles, and Oscar titles. We're entering into our 15th year of distributing the Oscar-nominated short films in US and Canada, over 600 theaters, and then we have partners around the world for the non-US theatrical release. And what we're really excited about is this year we have been beta testing an app in the US with about 400 subscribers, limited, and it is just really taken off. Not only to see the interest in shorts, but how they're consuming it, what they're consuming it, and the interest for us in that is our mobile first markets, Latin America and India especially, whereas India now they've already started taking that app and bundling it with other apps and distributing it. So it's a very exciting time for us.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this. We're going to come back to the U.S. Well, let's talk about international a little bit, because everyone here on this panel is really dealing with that except for Ben. And I want to get to that in just a few minutes. But Erick, you brought up, like, you're looking at China. You really are aggressive and you're strong in that area. But during the course of some of our conversations, you've also brought up, like, Disney. I mean, what is your opinion about Disney and where they're going and how they're approaching it? You know what? And they haven't touched really the international markets. Netherlands are starting to look at, but here, their technology platform, everything kind of crashed after about 77.5 million people. Are you going to see Disney come up and completely change the dynamics of the entire marketplace?
Well, I think what we're seeing is the first credible scale player to compete with Netflix entering the market. I think Disney is clearly one of the best in the industry at monetizing internationally. Yeah. They have massive theme park presence internationally. Their films, make the majority of their revenue in box office outside of North America today. So I think, and there's a massive fan base. So I think it's without a doubt they will be incredibly successful internationally. Where I think international, and this is, I wouldn't call it a headwind, but I would call it a challenge, is local markets. Consumers have local market preferences. Not everybody fits into a 4-quadrant, marketing universe. Sure. Their local markets have local tastes, they have local celebrities, they have cultures that are just not going to be available on scale global footprint services. So I think if you start to look at a global, look at these services from a global perspective, there is always going to be strong competition from local market entrants who know the customer and consumer in those territories better than others outside the country, and we're seeing that sort of dynamic play out in places like the Middle East, where you have services that are endemic to that market, that are catering to those tastes, competing with services that are sub and dubbing Western content. So I think that's you take a look at China, for example. China is a great example of a market where, domestic tastes, while they love foreign content, the majority of the hours consumed are off of locally produced, locally either televised or directed digital series. So I think that's a dynamic that can't be forgotten. You can't just create content ubiquitously for a global audience and expect to capture everybody with it.
That then raises a question to me about KPIs. It's like key performance indexes and how things are going to be measured out in each one of the marketplaces. Anthony, you've been looking at what is some of the more key parts of evaluating content and performance? I mean, we now just addressed kind of a broad stroke of Disney, community-centric needs for live local programming. What are you finding? Because you've got a
yeah. So when I speak every day, multiple calls with our different content partners, and for me, there's really 2 things that I'm focused on. Number one is I'm consistently keeping a rolling 90-day dashboard that I look at 2 things mainly around for my part of the business, which is hours per day, which is the amount each channel averages per day in total engagement, and then average session time. And so when I talk with our different content partners around strategy, it's always what can we do to buoy those KPIs. Now, as we have more natively integrated devices go into the market, there's sort of a rising tide that lifts all boats. But there is certainly ways we've found to accelerate that growth. For a long time we had a channel lineup that had a lot of short form partners, folks like Funny or Die, Tastemade, Refinery 29, when we initially were starting out. And what we discovered as 95% of our audience is watching on a smart TV, is surprise, surprise, people want to watch TV formats. And so over the last couple years, we've sort of started transforming our channel lineup. We still have shorter form partners and brands, and many of which can perform well on our platform, but we've definitely found a real focus on TV catalogs, movie catalogs. Erick's company has been great at aggregating some of that into specific brands so that folks know exactly what they're getting. They have a brand called Docurama that's all a catalog of great documentaries. They curate a channel called Con TV that tends to be a little bit more of like a sort of geeky convention audience. So those types of channels and tight curation, looking at hours watched per day and session times as you're programming out these linear channels, those tend to be the main things that I'm focused on.
So by saying that, from the KPIs, and it's like also measuring from an audience viewing basis as well, as far as if that's a value, or do we need to raise the subscription for whatever those kinds of services are at this time? I'm just...
Well, just to be clear, with our platform, we're ad supported, and our main focus is getting a user into a live TV experience with as low a barrier for entry as possible. No one's putting in an email address or a password. It's really, we've got the Xumo platform natively integrated on the device, so all you really need to do to have access to it is set it up on your network at home.
Fair enough, and that kind of leads me into Ben. When it comes to local markets, and you're doing the same thing, you're pushing out, and your take rate is very high. I mean, how many viewers are you now really counting, Anthony?
Well, what we're talking about right now is there's 45 million natively integrated devices in the United States.
So
now we're starting to, with LG, our LG Channels integration, that's starting to go international now. So that's in Western Europe, Brazil, and next month, Mexico.
Fantastic. But Ben, I want to talk about that because Erick brought it up when it came to the importance of local programming, as well as, I want to jump over as well to Marshall and to Mark. The fact of it is what are you seeing within your 79 markets that have stir right at the moment that within that environment? I mean, is the audience growing? Are they taking it? And what's going on with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very local first approach at Sinclair. Obviously, we have third-party partner channels. We have a lot of Erick's channels and other partners as well. I think we're up to about 80 channels now and growing. Bear in mind we're 10 months old, and you probably saw some stats up there. We'll probably close the year at just a couple of million downloads, so quite early stage compared to Pluto and Xumo and other services that have been around for a few years. When it comes to the local market side of things at Stir, it is one of the differentiating factors, because obviously a lot of these services have the same non-exclusive linear channels and VOD appearing. It's not a super competitive space right now when it comes to exclusivity. There's talk of that maybe emerging in the future, but for now it's really just enabling the content to be there. And so one of the discerning factors for Stir is that we have this 79 versions of the Stir City channel, which is really the channel one strategy for our business. Which, surprise, surprise, mimics the 200 primary networks that we have as a broadcast business. And so we've started in the markets where Sinclair has their owned and operated news operations, which is 79 markets. And in place of the standard syndicated content that is traditionally there on the primary stations, we've added really bulk of content from all of our partners. So that could be movie marathons, it could be documentaries. Sometimes it's from the pool of VOD availability. Other times people come to us with a set block of content that's available. And so just to mirror something that Anthony said, we're seeing strong demand for TV formats. Really it doesn't matter how old. Sometimes old game shows from Buzzer do really well. Sometimes really old movie marathons do well, which is a very similar part of the business that we have in the D2 Diginet space, the multicast networks. And so my role is to sit across business development and content acquisition for 4 of those networks national broadcast networks as well as the OTT. And there's a real kind of coming together of that world a little bit, encoring of old series and movies. And for us, what we're seeing on a local first basis is, super demand for that kind of content.
Yeah, I want to get to some of the aspects of what you're talking about there, especially in the local markets when you're talking about ad-based and the local ad sales force and like retaining what currently exists within the entire broadcast ecosystem as far as supporting those models. But you just mentioned something about VOD and where things are happening with VOD, and and you said that's a very still strong component about what you're serving within your markets. Mark, that's Fandango. Are you finding that the VOD growth and the partnerships that you're making right now is growing and booming?
Yeah, so just to give a little more definition, so we offer both rental and for purchase, EST and VOD, similar to iTunes and Vudu. We also have a B2B business, so you may not know us by our brand Fandango Now, but we power Roku's home entertainment store. We also powered Samsung's TV Plus store. We're available on all devices. So we think about ourselves as also a capability similar to Cinedigm, but on the TVOD and EST. But we also have a consumer-facing Fandango Now retail sites where you can come in and both through desktop and through phones and through smart TV apps, either purchase or download. One of the things that we're seeing is we've got a really large ecosystem of consumers coming to us on a monthly basis. So whether you're coming to Rotten Tomatoes or Movie Clips, looking at short form clips for both movies and TV, we have about 72% of the movie and TV going population or viewing population coming through one of our properties. Now, they're not all buying on our sites, but what that does is gives us a lot of insights into consumers' preferences. And so for us, we think we're the best at curation and ultimately at personalization and understanding your viewing habits in and out of the home. So for us, not every consumer is going to go and see a movie out of the home. So we should be the best at offering you up first-run movies as they come into the first window. So we're the only platform today that has movies that come out of the theatrical theater and go right into your home. And so, people tend to think that things are on Netflix and things are on Amazon Prime, but we have what those movies that you may not have been able to get out of the home for right in your home.
Well, let's move to shorts movies and where what you're finding take. You mentioned before, as far as the growth of the market, the Indian market, the consumption patterns, and you're based on subscription predominantly within your carriers out in the world at this time. Where are you seeing that going? Part of the things with subscription fatigue, we're looking at a lot of content here. We're looking at making a lot of availability. And I want to ask you real quick before I put it to the table. It's like, where do you see this is going? I made a very bold statement right at the beginning. It's like people are, starting to kind of hit that threshold. But you're out there in those markets that are now starting to really engage us, and they're consuming films, great films, but in very short forms. Where do you see this is happening within your market? So take India or Latin America.
Yeah, great films is a big distinction. I hear that TV formats are desired for your platforms, but we're not talking what we used to call YouTube videos. These are high-end, quality short films. Think of your feature film you like in 12 to 15 minutes. This is the level that we're seeing. And we have a demographic subscription base. We have an interesting model. Our model, it's tailored and varies from market to market. So we have ShortsTV US. We have ShortsTV Latin America, we call TV Cortos. I'm over both of those. Two separate channels. Content, US curated content and some content from around the world. But then we have Spanish language content, completely separate offering. Then we have ShortsTV Europe, Eastern Europe, Netherlands, Belgium, and then ShortsTV India. 4 distinct different operations in our footprint, which is 100 million households. Is what we do. So
you have 100 million households.
100 million households, yes. I say that because what we've been seeing is that we grew with subscriber base, the MVPDs and so forth, and so we're not going to, walk away from that audience. But what streaming has introduced is this whole new audience. Whereas we may skew a little older on our linear network, once we introduce the app, we're getting these teenagers that are crossing over to the 18-25 that want this high quality content in short form. And I think I just read something that by 2021, 75% of mobile is going to be video content consuming and so forth. I mean, you're shaking your head yes, because this is what we're seeing. And so we are excited to see what streaming has to offer. Our content is TV everywhere. We have all the rights for that, and it's part of our offering to offer this additional app for viewers to have as well.
You know, it's like there's so many different topics and subject points that have been brought up in this conversation that we could talk for the next hour.
Sure.
We've got about 5-7 minutes here left in this panel. You know, one thing about what we're looking at is, I'm just going to open this up to the panel because we could drill into this, but we're talking about audience fatigue for subscription-based offerings. What's your opinion? I'm going to go right to Mark with Fandango. What's your opinion right now, considering that you do most of first runs or video on demand? Do you see subscription leveling out? Do you see there's going to be dropping? Do you think there's going to be consolidation? Do you think that this is the way television is going to move to? What's your opinion about subscription fatigue? This is just an open question.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a huge amount of premium content coming to market, and I think the lines are blurred between what is a film and what is a TV show, which I think is to the benefit of consumers. I think at the same time, there's a lot of fragmentation, you know, depending upon what your business model is. For us, you know, we still see the theatrical movie-going experience being a great night out or a day out, but we also know that people want to watch movies in the home. Our alternative is we're not a subscription service, you know, you pay as you go. So, you know, over the holidays, you can't find Elf or National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation on Netflix. Get it for $3, and, you know, we think that's a great consumer benefit. But I think ultimately, you know, there's a lot of business models being thrown at content. And so the question I have over time is, when you think about video as a profit margin versus companies that have hardware and software as their primary profit margin, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out as AT&T with HBO Max and, you know, Apple with their own devices come into market. So I think the business models are going to evolve rapidly.
So it's been given, it's been proven that we have a lot of great content, but right at the moment, subscription fatigue. Erick, I know that you've got opinions about this.
Sure. So in my opinion, I'll tell you where the subscription fatigue is. It's with consumers paying for the cable bundle. That's people, you know, consumers, what it boils down to is this. Consumers have, if you look back at all of the polling, all of the surveys, consumers have repeatedly said, we want to have choice in the channels that we subscribe to, and we want to pay less than we're paying now. We don't want the rates to be ratcheting up, you know, 5 to 7% every year. And they're voting with their feet. If you look at the last quarter, taking out virtual MVPD subscriptions, which are negative gross margin businesses, and you look at pure traditional cable and satellite
like
subscriptions.
View or something.
They were down, it was down year over year almost 7%. That preceded the launch of Disney Plus, HBO Max, Peacock, Apple TV. So if we're sitting here at this table next year, and if anybody thinks that number is going to be smaller, they're insane.
Yeah.
That number is going to be immeasurably higher.
Let alone whoever picks up View.
So what does that mean? So what does that mean if you're operating a streaming service? Well, it's to me it's you now have an opportunity to recapture some of those consumer dollars that have been freed up. But there is not an unlimited amount of consumer dollars. Consumers have said that they want to spend $40 to $50. So it goes back to, on their total entertainment. Well, Netflix is 14 and Disney is 7, which it'll go higher eventually, and Hulu's 6. There's not a lot of room there. So, in terms of subscription fatigue, where does that play into it? Well, if you're not one of the marquee services with billion-dollar content budget, you have two options. You either need to control a vertical and own it, like Crunchyroll or Acorn or somebody.
Yep.
You need to own it and control it. Shorts would be, own your vertical, A, or B, you need to super serve the audience. So, that means throwing in podcasts, comics, audiobooks, ebooks, offers,
being a little,
super serve.
yeah, being a little more open on password sharing.
So that's
all
my opinion on the whole space.
It's just going to explode.
Yeah.
I want to get everybody's opinion in here, but just in a minute, there's another area where the broadcasters are really participating in around the world right now, and this is a little off topic, but it's something that's very much a part of Sinclair. So Ben, if you take just a minute, because we only have a couple, about ATSC 3.0. Because that is a real game changer when we're moving into this, as Erick said, in the next 12, 18 months, things are going to adjust. So we should make the audience aware, if they're not already, about ATSC 3.0.
Yeah, it's relevant from STIR's perspective as well. We very much see STIR as the kind of gateway to ATSC 3.0 in some respects. The one key thing to know about the new broadcast technology standard is that on the 1.0 sticks, where you can have 5 signals broadcast at once, you can have 20 on 3.0. So with that increased capacity, the
It's
need
two-way too.
Yeah, exactly, and you can have it's IP delivered. There's more services that you can run, but essentially, in layman's terms, which are the terms that I need to understand and explain to my partners, essentially over an antenna you can get 150 to 200 channels, and going forward that could be 800 to 1,000. And so when you start seeing services like Xumo, Pluto, IMDb TV, and STIR start ratcheting up the number of channels, and it's not just coming from traditional broadcast partners, but the digital-first people. It's new brands emerging every week. Those all have the potential, if people learn how to program their linear channel effectively, to be broadcast in every market over the air.
So this brings us, while this has been moving fast, we've been looking at OTT. OTT is vibrant. What we're talking about right now with ATSC 3.0, and what was just explained, is that most of the audiences around the world are pretty comfortable what their viewing behavior is all about when it comes to over-the-air broadcast. And we're going to start seeing that shift come into play when the digital ATSC 3.0 comes into action. And that's something to keep in mind about building out your overall services. We're at time right now, but we have a few minutes to kind of roll over, and I really I'd rather drill into a lot of other questions, but at that moment, anyone have a question that they'd like to ask? Okay, please, right in the front row. You had your hand up.
Who do you think might be the loser of this market? I know that people talk about Disney Plus, the winner is going to have Warner Plus, Apple Plus, TV Plus, but who do you think is going to have to come back? Or do you think people with Spotify are going to lose out? People who stop music services and pay for it? I wouldn't pay you $6.99 for Disney Plus.
Pardon me.
For Spotify. So do you think there are some inevitable losers to the subscription fatigue situation? Alice?
I'll take that. I think the big losers are going to be channels that, linear channels that made their hay as being part of the bundle with limited content offerings that will have limited ability to transfer to this new environment. I'm not going to name names, but think about all of the, whatever your favorite brand is, and all of the sub-variants of those channels are probably ones that are going to be hard-pressed to evolve. I think independent cable channels are going to have a difficult transition, as the bundles have to shrink and get smaller. Those channels are going to lose carriage rapidly or be bumped to expensive tiers that are going to be having less and less subscribers. So I would not want to be a independent cable channel or a cable, part of a universe of channels that are going to be suffering as the bundle erodes.
Yeah, and I would add that I think companies that have a single line of revenue and aren't the market leader are going to struggle. I think you really need to have diversified revenue streams, whether it's commerce, advertising, retail. In the case with us, we have gift cards. So, we've always looked at it as a cyclical, not only based on what content you have, but consumer behavior. So I think it's critical for companies to look at multiple revenue streams if they want to sustain a healthy ecosystem.
So in other words, you're saying that basically we're going to kind of roll back to what it was maybe 5 years ago, because that competitive environment was very real in the broadcast industry. Single form cable operators, they had a challenge, whatever market they were at, being able to serve up. You can just cite them. Golf Channel, I mean, everyone that was having that channel that were single focus. So now that we have the large scale aggregators like Xumo and capability of content with ShortsTV, what's the difference?
Look, you can't argue that the wave of streaming is coming, but subscription-based services still are the leader. I mean, this whole great unbundling that happened, now from what I'm reading, people are like, wait, I don't want to pick all my 6 different channels. I would like them all together at a reasonably low price. So I think this great unbundling might come into this rebundling. And right now, the MVPDs, they're in a great position. We certainly are not, dismissive of the fact that are blind to change. It's certainly coming. It's why we're positioning ourselves with our app. So this wave we're steadily in, the wave is here, this other wave is coming and we can move to it. But to quickly dismiss that the MVPDs aren't going to figure that out or someone else is going to aggregate and create these more acceptable bundles, I mean, maybe a little too soon to say that.
And then this is where this panel comes into being in a really strong position, just to wrap up. The expertise that they've all had around the world in licensing bundles, licensing opportunities are going to be able to play out really well with the carriers and the broadcasters or anyone else that wants to participate in this space. The depth of wisdom that they have is something that is really, truly tremendous, and being able to offer that up both from a content offering as well as a consulting offering for all of the different services is going to be something we're all going to want to be able to participate and understand and appreciate. So thank you very much for coming. I'm getting a high sign.